Sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. Tobi Ayodele was the kind of boy who could light up a room with his laughter. His dimples carved little pools in his cheeks whenever he smiled, and his large curious eyes sparkled with mischief and wonder. At just 9, his energy was boundless, his curiosity endless. But behind that cheerful facade was a fragile heart, a heart longing for something simple, yet rare in his world: time, attention, and love, from the two people who mattered most to him: his parents. Mr. Ayodele was the epitome of success, a corporate lawyer with an impeccable reputation, known for his sharp mind and even sharper suits. His name carried weight in the legal community, his words often deciding the fate of million-dollar deals. Mrs. Ayodele, equally formidable, was an executive at one of Lagos' biggest multinational firms. Her schedule was packed with board meetings, business trips, and late-night conference calls. Together, they were the picture of the power couple, admired, envied, and respected. But their success came at a cost. Tobi's days were meticulously structured, yet painfully lonely. He would wake up to the faint aroma of brewed coffee lingering in the empty kitchen, the distant hum of the city already alive beyond the tall windows of their luxury apartment in Lekki. His parents were often long gone before he opened his eyes, leaving behind hurried notes scribbled on sticky pads. "Breakfast on the counter. Be good. We love you." He would stare at those notes, the ink slightly smudged, as if even the words were in a rush. After school, he would return to a silent house. The walls were adorned with expensive art, the floors spotless, the air-conditioned rooms filled with everything but warmth. His evenings were spent with the househelp, Mama Joy, a stern, no-nonsense woman whose affection was as rare as Lagos traffic-free day. She ensured he did his homework, ate dinner, and went to bed on time. But she was no substitute for a bedtime story or a gentle goodnight kiss. In the quiet of his room, Tobi created imaginary worlds where his parents were superheroes, who saved the day but always made it home in time for dinner. Worlds where laughter echoed louder than silence. But one day, everything changed. The Ayodeles decided to bring in a relative, Auntie Bisi, to help manage the household and look after Tobi. She was a distant cousin from Ibadan, someone Mr. Ayodele vaguely remembered from childhood gatherings. On paper, it seemed perfect. Family, trustworthy, and available. Auntie Bisi arrived on a humid Saturday morning. She was in her late 20s. Her presence, wrapped in bright Ankara fabrics, and an even brighter smile. Her laughter was infectious, her voice warm like honey, and she carried an air of familiarity that instantly eased the Ayodele's guilt for being absent parents. At first, Tobi adored her. She cooked his favorite meals: jollof rice, perfectly spiced, sweet plantains fried to a golden crisp, and warm puff-puff that melted in his mouth. She listened to his endless stories about school, superheroes, and imaginary adventures. She helped him with his homework, her patience wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. For the first time in a long while, Tobi felt seen. "We are lucky to have you, Bisi," his mother often said, relief softening her usually stern features. "She's like family." But beneath her cheerful exterior, something sinister lurked. It began innocently, or at least, that's how it seemed. A touch here, a lingering glance there, nothing overt, nothing that would raise alarms. One evening, as they watched cartoons in the dimly lit living room, Auntie Bisi rested her hand on Tobi's knee. He froze, It wasn't the kind of familiar touch that Mama Joy gave when she straightened his uniform or patted his head. It felt different, strange, but not threatening. At least, not yet. "You are such a good boy, Toby," she whispered, her fingers gently tracing patterns on his skin. "So handsome." Toby felt a knot form in his stomach, an unease he couldn't name. But she was kind, right? She made him laugh, tucked him in, called him her little prince. Maybe this was just normal. Days turned into weeks. The touches became more frequent, more invasive. A brush of her hand here, a lingering caress there. When Toby recalled, confused and scared, she would laugh it off. "Don't be shy, it's our little secret," she would say, her voice dripping sweetness that felt like poison. "You don't want to make your daddy and your mommy angry, do you?" Those words became chains. Toby began to change. His bright, infectious laughter faded into silence. His drawings, once filled with colorful superheroes, grew darker. Scribbles of shadowy figures and tear-streaked faces. He avoided eye contact, flinched at sudden movements, and spent more time alone. His teachers noticed, his friends noticed, but his parents, they were too busy. One Friday evening, as Toby sat quietly at the dinner table, his mother glanced at him over her glass of wine. "Toby, are you okay?" she asked, her tone casual, distracted by the email she was reading on her phone. He nodded, forcing a smile, but his eyes darted just for a second toward Auntie Bisi, who sat across from him, her smile unwavering. Mrs. Ayodele caught the look, a flicker of something. Fear, discomfort, crossed Toby's face, but she dismissed it. After all, Bisi was family. That night, Toby had a nightmare. Shadows chased him in his sleep, faceless and terrifying. He woke up drenched in sweat, his small body trembling, desperate for comfort. He tiptoed to his parents' room. The door was locked. He stood there for a moment, his tiny fists clenched, his heartbeat loud in his ears. Then, defeated, he returned to his room, clutching his teddy bear, the only source of warmth he had left. The next morning, he overheard his parents discussing another business trip. "We'll only be gone for 3 days, Toby," his father said, ruffling his hair as if that simple gesture could fill the void of his absence. "You'll be fine with Auntie Bisi." Toby wanted to scream, to beg them to stay, but the words wouldn't come. His voice felt trapped, suffocated by fear and confusion. While his parents were away, the nightmare became reality. Auntie Bisi's actions escalated. Gone was the playful, cheerful cousin with the bright Ankara dresses and honey sweet voice. In her place was someone darker. Her touches no longer masked as accidents. Her words sharp and venomous. "You're my special boy, Toby," she whispered one evening, her grip firm on his fragile wrist. "This is our little secret. You don't want your mommy and your daddy to leave you forever, do you?" The words echoed in his mind like a curse. He believed her. In his young, impressionable heart, he thought he had done something wrong, that it was his fault. Toby was trapped in a web of fear and confusion. He withdrew further. His once colorful drawings turned into scribbles of darkness, angry reds, blacks, and chaotic lines. His grays plummeted, and the light in his eyes dimmed, replaced by shadows his teachers couldn't understand, and his parents didn't see. At school, Mrs. Ayodele, his class teacher, noticed the changes. She called him aside after class one day, kneeling to his eye level. "Toby, is everything okay at home?" she asked gently. Toby's lips parted slightly, as if the words wanted to escape, but fear swallowed them whole. He shook his head, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Are you sure?" Another nod, another lie. One evening, shortly after his parents returned from yet another trip, Tobi sat quietly at the dinner table. The clinking of cutlery against ceramic plates was the only sound in the room. His mother glanced up from her plate, her sharp eyes catching something, a flicker of terror as Auntie Bisi reached to pass him a bowl of soup. Tobi flinched. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but Mrs. Ayodele saw it. "Tobi, why did you do that?" she asked, her tone sharper than intended. Tobi's hands trembled around his spoon. Tears welled up, blurring his vision. In his mind, Auntie Bisi's words screamed, "If you tell anyone, they will blame you." So he said nothing. That night, Mrs. Ayodele couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed the scene at the dinner table, the fear in her son's eyes, the stiffness in his posture. A mother's intuition gnawed at her. She rose from her bed, her footsteps soft against the cold marble floor as she made her way to Tobi's room. She found him curled up in a corner, clutching his teddy bear, his small body shaking with silent sobs. She sank to her knees beside him. "Tobi, what's wrong?" Her voice was barely a whisper, trembling with fear she couldn't name. At first, silent. Then, like a dam breaking, Tobi's sobs erupted, raw and heartbreaking. "It's my fault, Mommy. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," he cried, his tiny hands covering his face. "Fault? What fault, baby?" she whispered, gently pulling his hands away, her heart pounding. Between gaps and broken sobs, Tobi told her everything. Every word felt like a dagger slicing through her heart. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as the horrifying truth unfolded. The next morning, rage and disbelief boiled beneath the surface as the Ayodeles confronted Auntie Bisi. She denied everything. "How dare you accuse me?" she snapped, her cheerful mask slipping, replaced by a cold, defiant glare. "I've been nothing but good to your son." But the Ayodeles weren't done. In a twist of fate, they remembered the security cameras discreetly installed around the house, a decision made for safety but never actually actively monitored. Desperate for answers, they reviewed the footage. What they saw shattered whatever fragments of denial remaining. There it was, the truth, laid bare, hidden in the background of ordinary days. A touch here, a threatening whisper there. They called the authorities. The police arrived swiftly, their presence turning the once still home into a flurry of activity. Auntie Bisi was arrested, her screams echoing down the hallway as she was led away in handcuffs. But the damage had already been done. The trial was harrowing. Tobi had to relieve his trauma, his words shaky but brave, as he faced a courtroom full of strangers. His parents sat by his side, their hands clasped tightly together, guilt etched into every line of their faces. Auntie Bisi was sentenced to prison, but there were no victors in that courtroom, only survivors. The Ayodeles were forever changed. They realized that love wasn't just about providing the best education, the biggest house, or the most expensive toys. Love was time, presence, attention. Mr. Ayodele resigned from his high-pressure job, choosing instead to start a consultancy that allowed him to work from home. Mrs. Ayodele negotiated a flexible schedule, determined never to miss another moment of her son's life. Tobi began therapy with a kind, patient counselor named Dr. Ijoma. She had a gentle smile and eyes that held no judgment, just warmth and understanding. Through countless sessions filled with drawings, storytelling, and tears, Tobi slowly found his voice again. His laughter returned, not the same as before, but real. layered with resilience and healing. His drawings filled with color again, bright blues, greens, and yellows. The Ayodeles learned to be present, to listen, to see. Parents, the best gift you can give your child is your presence. Be their safe place. Listen, even when they are silent. Don't wait for the silence to speak louder than voice. Be a part of our growing family by subscribing, like, and comment. Love you.